Okay, so before we get started on that, though, we're going to cover a couple of things really quickly about this. So, by the way, guys, this piece of paper right here. Okay, so important things really quick. As a general overview of the AP exam, because we still have some people that are kind of confused or they just have never taken an AP exam before. So, as a quick clarification, so AP exam is at 7:30 on Friday. You need to be there at approximately 7:15. I will be here at about 6:30, and if you have any questions that are like your last minute, I forgot everything about Jackson, you can run in here and you can ask me those questions and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Okay? So you need to be there at 7:15. You need a pencil, several pencils, and you need pens, which are either blue or black ink. You must have pens for your essays. Yeah. It is suggested no, because those are not that like number 9 or whatever pencil. They want actual real life pencils, because the lead on a mechanical pencil is very soft. Okay? The paper's over here. Anyways, we'll talk about that. So, okay, really quickly, listen. So, anyways, like I was saying, make sure you bring an ID. Make sure you know your number for the AP board, the college board. Make sure that you're there on time. It's kind of one of the most important things. Just don't be late. That's the biggest thing. Every single year there's kids who are late and they shut the door on your face. So do not be late to the exam. Okay? Anybody have any generic questions about how the AP exam works? Yes.
Do we have to bring that card that we ripped out of the test book?
You technically do not, but a lot of people do. Okay. It just ensures that you have the right everything. Anybody else have any generic questions? Okay. Next, before we get started on our topics, I want you to look at this paper. Now, I'm not saying that this paper is going to do you any good, but it might give you an idea of what a possible essay question is going to be on. So these are all the essays that have been asked in the past, little bit of time. Now, important things to note about this. If you see on the left where it says FRQ, think of that as an LEQ. They're the same thing. What happened is before, what you used to do instead of multiple SAQs is you wrote several LEQs. So rather than doing one LEQ, you did 3 LEQs. And then they took it down to 2, so you used to do 2 LEQs and 1 DBQ. And they've now changed that. So think of the FRQs as an LEQ. Now, important things to note as you go through here, if you see there's a lot of white boxes from 2014 to 2017. Most likely, those are going to be the topics that your essays are going to be on. There's a lot of people that say Jackson era is going to be the DBQ. So, if you know Jackson, you will be good to go. Because right now, if you see, that's that nationalism and sectionalism. That's basically when we split apart as a nation. So that's 1800 to 1850. Jacksonian democracy. Those have not been asked since the rewrite. So there's a good likelihood. And also a New Deal DBQ. New Deal Depression, Roaring Twenties. They have not had an essay question on those in 3 or 4 years. So most likely on all the whites, also imperialism, that would be a great one. All the whites is what I would say that you have the most likely chance of having a question on it. So whether or not that's actually going to happen or not, I mean, who the heck knows? All I can tell you is I don't know how much this will help you, but maybe it will. Yes?
So would it be a possibility that they ask another DQ on the revolution or populism?
They will not probably ask one on the revolution. They just did revolution last year. Populism was on a DBQ last year. It was an LEQ. Oh, the other 4? Then probably not. But who knows? Yeah. Anyways, so take this as you want. I don't know how this will impact you in your studying. A lot of teachers think it's Jackson. So if you know Jackson, then you should be good. A lot of people are guessing Jackson this year. I would say, based on this chart, DBQ, I would say it's going to probably be either Jackson, imperialism, or Roaring Twenties, Great Depression. That would be my guess. The last Roaring Twenties DBQ was back in the 70s. So I think it's time for a new one. Civil War, I think they asked not that long ago. Civil War, well, I guess they haven't had a DBQ on it. No, they had a DBQ back in 2013, so possibly. Because I remember that there were some documents in there. Who knows? Who knows what's going to be on? By the way, a really important thing, by the way, just as an FYI about general overview of the AP exam. When you get out of the AP exam, do not talk about the questions. Do not go on Twitter and talk about the questions. Don't go off and say, wow, that DBQ on Civil War was really hard. The reason why is because this version of the exam is given over the next week. So while there is a national date here, they have the late exam next week, which sometimes they throw in the original exam. So because of that, you are not allowed to discuss the exam for 1 week. So when all you guys are super excited, you come running in here, you're like, Miss Ray, you're not going to believe what the DBQ was on? I'm going to stop you right there because you can't do it. Okay? So, and I know some of you will secretly go and chat in your own secret clubs, but you're not supposed to for 1 week. So 1 week from the exam date, you are not supposed to discuss any questions whatsoever. Technically, you're not supposed to do it until they release the exam, which they do in June. But I am sure that you will all beat that because you're all going to go in your cars and talk about it. But you're not supposed to talk about it. And especially don't put it on social media because they have fake bots that are specifically designed to find students who tweet about the exam and tweet about the exam questions. That's how last year with the AP Lit exam, that's how they found out all this AP Lit people that were taking the pictures of the test because they put it all on Twitter and they ended up disbanding like 600 people. So.
I was wondering, just like, there are like 2 LEQs for each year, it looks like, so are there only 2 options for LEQ?
Yeah, so LEQ you get 3 options, remember?
Well, yeah, but I was wondering because like there's only 2 on all these columns,
So that's because there was 2 that were similar last year. On a similar time period.
Wait, even for the previous year and the year before?
Yeah. Okay. They've changed it now. Last year they only had 2 LEQ options, now they have 3.
Oh, okay.
It's new. Yeah.
Are all the LAQs going to be like what it was in the practice test? Because it wasn't really specific, like causation, comparison.
In theory, those sentence stems that we've been using, according to last fall, those were put out by the AP board that was supposed to be how all the LEQs were set up. And then that practice exam was completely different than how they gave it to us. So according to the AP College Board, the practice stems that we've been doing this whole year is supposed to be its layout. But then we got to the practice exam, and it wasn't that layout at all. So I don't know if they've all of a sudden decided to change it. It's supposed to be this to what extent or things like that, and it wasn't on that. So do your best. Yeah. Yeah. All the essays on the exam, I believe, are all cause and effect essays.
I forgot how to tell in what
Just think about what it's trying to show. Is it trying to show, if it says 2 time periods, it's an automatic comparison. And if it's talking about how did things change or stay the same, it's complicated. Okay, so any general questions? All right, we're going to get to the box. Okay, so we're just going to pick randomly, and we're going to go over some of the topics that you guys feel like you need to know. I don't know if last night we did that, and I don't know if it helped, but we're going to try it again because you're also special and you have topics you want to know. All right, so first one, Civil War and Reconstruction. Okay, general things about Civil War. Okay, things you need to know is causes. Why did we get into the Civil War? And we talked about that a ton yesterday. So think about causes as a bunch of compromises and band-aids in order to be able to fix the problem. Basically, we do compromise of 1820, do compromise of 1850. We're trying to compromise rather than just fix the problem. So we're just band-aiding the problem. Like, imagine if you needed like 100 stitches and you put a band-aid on it. That's basically what the problem is. Okay? When we get into the Civil War, right, we fight and things like that. Slavery is really used, like especially the Emancipation Proclamation. It's definitely used as more of a war tactic than anything else in order to degrade the South. The South pretty much gets economically ruined by this war, as well as has the most amount of deaths during the Civil War. Now, following the Civil War, we begin the Reconstruction Period. Had Lincoln been alive, I think Reconstruction would have been a lot more effective, probably. But the problem with Reconstruction is we tried to reconstruct the nation, but we also didn't really punish the South. It kind of just went back within the next 10, 12 years back to normalcy in the South. So Reconstruction era is kind of defined as trying to rebuild the economy in the South So they stabilize the economy. They make a unified bill system throughout America. They end up taking away people, basically, as long as you said that you had your loyalty to the Union, they pretty much pardoned you for the most part, unless you were one of the really serious guys like Jefferson Davis. But the problem is that really, we didn't do enough. I think the problem is we had a really bad lack of presidencies, not a very strong presidency, and because of that, we weren't able to really reconstruct. Additionally, at the end of this, it ends with Robert...
Hayes?
Yes. Rutherford B. Hayes. I'm thinking of a different Hayes, and it's not having to do with a push. Anyways, so what happens with Rutherford B. Hayes is, remember, he is going to make the agreement that basically says that if I get the presidency, then what I'll do is I'll basically give the South back, pardon a bunch of people, and the South pretty much goes back to normalcy, and it allows the South to be able to take advantage of that and begins the Jim Crow law era in the South. Yes. Exactly. So the military basically was the only lasting force in the South that said that you had to do what we say. And Hayes pretty much comes to the presidency. I like to put it as a corrupt bargain all over again, because basically what you're doing is you're making an agreement so Hayes gets the presidency and pretty much allows the South to do whatever they want. So a lot of people I don't like Hayes. I think Hayes kind of took advantage of a bad situation to make it good for himself. Huh?
Hayes is in the one that occurred.
Yes. Hayes, there's this era, it's called the era of bad presidents, which is basically after Lincoln, and it goes up until Teddy Roosevelt, and it just has all these presidents over and over again who don't really do much of anything. Huh? No. Not meaning Trump. It ends at Roosevelt. The era of sucky presidents. Yes. Okay. Anybody have any more questions about this? I don't know who wrote this. I just want to make sure I covered anything you wanted.
Can you say 3 terms that we could use for
Reconstruction?
Reconstruction?
Reconstruction. Well, technically 13th, 14th, and 15th happens right at the beginning. I would do Jim Crow laws, because I think that's a great example of the failure. I think Rutherford B. Hayes is another great example you can use for Reconstruction. Military districts, or military in general, if you just talk about the military being in the South. Radical Republicans is probably the most common one that you're going to see. Hi, Nick. What do you need?
I was going to ask you a question, but you seem busy, so I'll come back.
Okay, bye, Nick. Okay. Anyways, Radical Republicans I think is a great example, because those are going to be the ones that are going to debate what's going on with this Reconstruction era. Yeah. What? 10% plan? What?
10% plan?
Oh, yeah, the 10% plan. Sorry. I was like, I don't think you're speaking. I think you're speaking Latin. You could use that. It's like, I don't think they're ever going to use a question on it, because that's so specific. Basically, it was Lincoln's attempt to be able to assist the South, but obviously Lincoln died, so it really wasn't put into the plan. Remember, right after Lincoln died, they tried to do Lincoln's plan, but then it basically completely warps within the year after. I think a Reconstruction era essay would be hard. I think you'll definitely see an LEQ possibility on it, but I think an LEQ would be really hard. And a DBQ, that would suck. Be a really hard DBQ.
Don't jinx it.
I shouldn't jinx it. Yeah. Sure. So, Jacksonian democracy. Think of Jackson as the guy who hates the government, yet is in the government. Okay. Yes, and we all know how Bethany feels about Jackson. No, Jack Ingle.
Don't bully.
I know she has a very strong opinion on Jackson. So, okay. Moving on. Okay. So, moving on. With Jacksonian democracy, think of it as this way. Remember back with Jefferson. Jefferson and Jackson would be best friends if they were in the same time period. Both of them are small town government. Both of them grew up in very rural environments, and that kind of emphasized that as well. They wanted to help out the small town, the common man is what it's called, and the small town farmer.
Jackson expanded the federal power so much for a guy who hated government.
Again, in theory, he hated the government, and he said in his writings how much he hated the government.
And then he was like, I don't listen to the government, I'm just going to better everything you do.
He's a hypocrite, let's just be honest. So the thing with Jackson is that he's going to come into the government, but remember, You have to remember 1824 first. So remember 1824, he doesn't get it because of the corrupt bargain with Henry Clay. No, that 1824 is corrupt bargain, 1828 is spoil system. So he loses the presidency, which makes him hate government even more. So when he wins, he institutes the spoil system, which basically gives jobs to his friends, as kind of like now I'm in the government, so I get to do whatever I want. Now, even though he believed in small-town government, he definitely didn't believe it when he was in the presidency. He did massively expend federal power. He instituted a tariff. He had trade restrictions on other countries. He attempted to build to help the economy in America. The only really thing that he really took away in terms of his down with big government was the Second National Bank. Yeah.
The tariff he implemented, the Tariff of 1828?
Yes.
Isn't that the Tariff of Abominations? Is that different?
Tariff of Abominations is in 37. That's the nullification crisis. It's a little bit different. Hold on. Hey. Shh.
If there was a DBQ or LEQ on Jacksonian democracy, how would it be formatted? Like, would it ask?
I think it would say there's a couple things it could be. I can see it as a comparison essay where I think that it would be something along the lines of how was Jackson different than Jefferson, which is basically just small and big town government, like small government versus big government. I think it could be a CCOT. Basically, I think you're most likely on a CCOT. I think it would be something along the lines of how did Jackson's democracy change the American political spectrum? I think that could be it. Because that's a relatively easy one. Because all you're thinking about there is change. How did Jackson change America? And then if you think about it, then you go into further things like the Cherokee Nation, you go into Native Americans, you go into Trail of Tears, you go into the Indian Removal Act. Biggest thing with him as well, Second National Bank. You must know that he hated it. And so that remember, that's where basically he couldn't take away the bank, so he just stopped giving money to the bank and invested it in private banks. And it's basically bankruptcy.
And that brought the panic of the 1837.
And it brought the panic because it ruined the economy, because he ruined the economy, but he did get rid of the bank. Yeah.
Who instituted the Second National Bank? The first one was Hamilton, but who did the second? Madison.
Pretty sure it was Madison.
That's what?
I'm not 100%. Because Madison was a massive supporter of the bank. Hamilton starts the bank, and then remember it goes away in like the very early 1800s. Yeah, and then they bring it back. I doubt you would need to know who started it. As long as you have an idea of who would hate the bank and like the bank, which is Hamilton, Jefferson.
Jackson got rid of it, and basically Jackson got rid of like power of government, but he expanded the government. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Hi, Mr. Reed.
You're the man.
Anyway, so yeah, pretty much. So in theory, by degrading the national bank, Jackson destroys the national government as in destroys the power, but he also had massive power in foreign trade. I mean, that's why he did the tariffs. So that's where you get the king. So yeah, and the big thing is if you see that document, do not screw up that document, because that document has been asked in an SAQ in the past, and everyone failed it. It's the one with Jackson, and he has the scepter, and he has the king. And all of you guys were all like, oh, that means that everyone thinks Jackson's awesome because they're calling him a cool king. Okay, don't act like you didn't say that when we did that the first time. Because everybody failed that on my exam. Okay, listen. Anyways. Hey, so that image is, if you get a DBQ on Jackson, I bet that image will be on there. They did use it for an SAQ previously, so I don't know. I think that the most likely document that you would see is that one, probably one on nullification crisis with Calhoun. Yeah, and then probably something in the panic. Okay, any more Jackson questions? Yeah.
Yeah, what else did he do in terms of foreign trade?
So he basically instituted a tariff, a very high tariff, which in theory would help American goods and cause more people in America to buy American rather than buy foreign. However, as we know with tariffs in the past, tariffs do also tend to decline trade because people can't afford to buy goods in America. So while it did help Americans buy American, it also lessened the ability to be able to trade foreign, which is part of the reason why the tariff, as well as the destruction of the Second National Bank, causes the Panic of 1837.
Okay, so around the nullification crisis, this is
Yeah.
kind of like a compound question. So number one, what did the states want to nullify? Was it banks?
Yeah. So what happened with that is that this is actually the Tariff of Abominations. So this was a tariff, and basically what they felt like was that the tariff was helping the North tremendously, but destroying Southern cotton because they couldn't trade with England. So what they felt like is that this was terrible. So Calhoun is going to come up with an idea. Basically, he says, we signed the Constitution, and because we signed the Constitution, we then as states have the ability to nullify or void part of the Constitution because we're the ones who signed it.
But the Supremacy Clause says...
Well, that goes into the whole other thing. But yeah, so that's why they tried to nullify. So they said, we can take away any law and say it's not legal, which is why South Carolina is going to say we're going to nullify this because they didn't believe it. It's kind of like a mini Civil War. Had they nullified, it would have been Civil War.
Makes sense. So then, like what you said, the
Supremacy Clause?
Yeah.
So that like kind of made sure that the national.
Yeah.
That was.
Supremacy Clause means that no matter what, the federal government supersedes the state.
But today.
They still do that.
For instance, the national law is that it's illegal, but in all like a bunch of states they've overridden that.
Well, it's not that it's illegal. So by the federal government, it's a Class C drug, which means that interstate commerce-wise, you can't transport it interstate, which is why if I'm flying from Colorado to California, even though both of those ending states allow recreational marijuana use, I can't bring that onto a plane because now I'm using interstate commerce. So it's actually, that's an interstate commerce. So that's different. The Supremacy Clause, a great example of that would be the gay marriage laws, because the states, certain states banned it, but then when the federal government steps in and says, actually, this is breaking constitutional laws, then it applies to everyone. And a state can't just all of a sudden say, well, I changed my mind, I'm not going to follow your laws. Yeah.
Can you briefly explain like minority rights in this era?
So minority rights, the biggest one.
I have a question in regards.
Okay.
Really quick. So the Supremacy Clause, is that what kind of shut down the nullification crisis?
Yes.
Okay, and then the 14th
And Jackson sending in a bunch of troops to South Carolina.
Okay, and then the 14th Amendment, does that also reinforce that with the corporation doctrine? Can you say that too?
Yeah. Yeah. So to answer your question, minority rights, there's really two. It's going to be women, law system, breaking cults of domesticity. Also at this time period, right afterwards, you also have moving in towards Seneca Falls Convention in the 40s. And then you also have Native Americans with the Trail of Tears and the Cherokee. So if you were to do a Jackson one, though, you're probably not going to talk about women, but you're definitely going to talk about Native Americans. But if you're doing a general minorities during that time, it's women and natives. Yes? Anybody else? Okay, great. We have like 2 minutes.
Can you really quickly talk about the period 9, like the Reagan and the Trevor, because like we faced lots of everything and
Okay.
really sticks to my mind.
I'm going to do an extra lecture on that and post it online. I'm going to do a whole lecture on Reagan. Yeah.
Great Society extra lecture.
So it was supposed to be taped, and then a student came in. It'll be up tonight.
Okay.
I was in the middle of taping it, and a student came in.
But the thing is,
And I had to post it. So, well, you can actually access it. It's all on YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead and let's end this.